Everyone, so this is the one shot I've had today to do a quick Q&A. So I'm going to do a quick Q&A right now. Someone sent me three questions recently, and I have not had a chance to reply to their email. So I thought, you know what? I'll just do the Q&A live right here, and then I'll just send them a link, and everybody else can see the whole thing as well. All right, so the three questions. The first was one, to store up Bitcoin, would you recommend continuing to buy through Coinbase.com? Yes, Coinbase.com is, in my opinion, absolutely head and shoulders above any alternative. They are a publicly traded company. They are the custody solution that almost all of the big banks on Wall Street use to custody their Bitcoin. So they're really head and shoulders above anyone else. There's no other sort of major cryptocurrency exchange, slash Bitcoin bank like Coinbase. I mean, they're really in a league of their own. So yes, I would say absolutely Coinbase is by far the best place to buy Bitcoin. Their fees are lower than others. And anyway, they're full service. You can do just about anything. So anyway, highly recommend Coinbase. If you end up with a relatively large balance on Coinbase, then I would recommend moving it over to Bitkey, Bitkey. The website is bitkey.world. And that is great for sort of long-term storage of Bitcoin. And you can actually buy Bitcoin from within Bitkey by linking it to Coinbase, or they support Coinbase, they support Robinhood, and one other, maybe PayPal. I can't remember what the third one is. But anyway, but yeah, I think Coinbase, for the vast majority of people in the vast majority of situations, buying on Coinbase makes the most sense and is just head and shoulders above anything else. And they have the Coinbase debit card, which actually lets you spend Bitcoin, whereas that's the only one I'm aware of that is from a large reputable exchange that doesn't have something weird or wonky about it. Okay, so that's number one. Yes, Coinbase number one. Long-term storage, I would still do Bitkey, website bitkey.world. That's still the best sort of most secure place to store long-term Bitcoin. But as far as buying it, I would buy on Coinbase regardless. All right, number two, how much should be saved up before trying to use the Coinbase debit card for regular expenses? That is a great question. So the strategy of buying Bitcoin, holding your balances in Bitcoin, and then using Bitcoin to buy stuff can work with any amount of money. Obviously, if you use $1, you're going to end up being able to buy maybe one stick of gum every couple months. So obviously that doesn't make sense. And even though it's very easy to integrate Coinbase with TurboTax, or in my case, I just download the tax forms off Coinbase and send them to my tax planner at the end of the year. So even though that's very elegant, I can obviously understand if you have a small balance, using it to spend Bitcoin is creates unnecessary tax headaches that may not be worth the value. So I don't know where the scales tip. Somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000 is probably when it starts to make sense. In my case, I've been living for free for the last couple of years. And I'll post updated numbers on this as soon as I get a chance. But back in late 2022, which was sort of the bottom of the Bitcoin bear market, meaning down market, meaning when the prices were in the ups and down swings, they were in a low point. I put 18 months of living expenses in the Coinbase debit card. And I've been, I waited for a few weeks until the price was consistently higher than when I put in it. But I've been living for free for 2 years now. Now, obviously, some of that was I did it in late 2022, so I was buying Bitcoin at about a quarter of the current price, or a little less than that. Maybe one quarter to one third of the current price. And part of that was I had 18 months of living expenses. But if you look at somebody like Dave Ramsey, they're recommending 3 to 6 months of living expenses in an emergency fund anyway. And so it's not completely, inconceivable that someone between savings and, checking account and all that would have, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months, or in my case, 18 months. And my conviction level was high enough that I put 18 months of living expenses into Coinbase. And the balance with my Coinbase debit card is, last time I checked, was 57% higher than the original balance. So I've way spent the original balance, because it's been more than 18 months. It's been 24 months. So I spent the entire original balance plus some significant amount more, and the balance is still 57% higher than it started. So Bitcoin has been outrunning my expenses significantly. And I think that's still possible. I think it's still possible to sort of, if you have 18 months to proactively put in Bitcoin today, I think you could probably still do that same strategy where 18 months of living expenses is enough to effectively live for free, um, which actually has worked for me. And now that it's 57% higher than the 18, months of living expenses I put in initially, now it's even 57% higher than that. Over the next, 12 months, it should end up, a couple 100% higher, which means then I'll have enough in again to not only just live for free for 2 years, but I think there's a good chance I could, live for free off that one debit card with that one deposit of 18 months of living expenses. I think I can use that debit card for the rest of my entire life without it ever running out of Bitcoin. Now, obviously, the Bitcoin balance is coming down, but the US dollar balance of that Bitcoin just keeps going up. Now it goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but the balance is large enough because I started with 18 months of living expenses that that I'm significantly above my starting balance, even though I've spent significantly more than my starting balance. So somewhere I think the scales, if you have less, let's call it less than $2,000, messing with the debit card is probably only worth it in that it makes it very clear to you that Bitcoin is money. Like you can spend it. You can spend Bitcoin anywhere that Visa or MasterCard or anything else is accepted. You can use it with Apple Pay. You can use it on your watch. Like literally 100% of what I buy is, Coinbase debit card right there on my Apple Watch. I stick it out the window at Chick-fil-A and boom, it's, I pay for stuff. So I pay for virtually 100% of everything with Bitcoin. And again, I've been, living for free for the last couple of years. But again, that's because I had 18 months. So if you have less than $2,000, it may not make sense other than just it's very powerful to realize that Bitcoin is money and that's how it works. If you have more than 18 months worth of living expenses that you can front load into Bitcoin right now, that's probably enough to live. That's probably enough to fund a debit card that you could use for the rest of your life. Again, no guarantees there. This is not financial advice, but if you have 18 months, that would probably create a balance where as long as you waited to start using the debit card till it's, at least 10 or 20% higher than the price today and consistently above that price and before you started using it, I think the next, the near future of Bitcoin is going to be so positive to the upside that you could probably get a debit card that if it's preloaded with 18 months of living expenses, you could do what I did 2 years ago, and I think it would still work. Obviously, my strategy is working fantastically well because I'm 57% even above the original, which means instead of, basically I started with 18 months of living expenses, lived for free for 2 years, and now I have 2 years of living expenses because the 18 months of living expenses has expanded to now 2 years of living expenses because Bitcoin outran my living expenses. But if you got less than $2,000, it probably only makes sense to mess with it just for the realization that it is money. It works like any other money, except it increases in value instead of loses it. Somewhere between $2,000 and probably $10,000 is where it tips, where it sort of makes sense to do this strategy. Buying Bitcoin, waiting for it to appreciate, and then spending it when it's at a higher balance. But the real benefit in all of this is that once you realize that Bitcoin is money and can be used like any other money, you tend to buy way more of it. And when you tend to buy way more of it, you, over the long term, tend to be way better off. Now, again, you've got to have some patience. You've got to be able to ride some of the ups and downs. But overall, it's just, outperformed everything. So anyway, so that's sort of my, my thesis there. And when I set out on this journey with the Coinbase debit card, I was 85% certain, let's call it 85% certain that I could create a debit card that would never run out for the rest of my life. And it's my certainty now for is like 98% based on when I started and everything else. And I would still say my certainty is about that high. Even if you're starting with, now I've got 2 years of living expenses instead of 18 months, just because it's appreciated in addition to, spending the entire original balance. But I still think the probability if somebody came to me and said, okay, I've got 18 months of living expenses, I can ride the ups and downs, I can take a 20 or 30% price correction as long as it only lasts for, days or weeks or a month or two, I can do this. I would say if they said, give me a probability that I could create a debit card that never runs out starting right now, I would still put that probability at about 85%. So and 15% chance that you'll end up way better off. You're just not living for free. So again, the closer you get to 18 months of living expenses right now, the closer I think you can live for free. The more above, let's say somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000, the more you are in a place where you can mitigate, the entire impacts of inflation and beyond. Meaning, your purchasing power is far outstripping inflation. And but so those are some, some elements there. All right, so the third question was, how many people do I know that are employing this same strategy? The short take is, I don't know. Most people are relatively private about their personal finances. I try to be more open, at least speaking in percentages, because I want to help as many people as I can. I'm just a very open person. Like, I've had my cell phone number and my email address on my website forever. And at Baumgar Corporation, if you wanted to reach me, the CEO of a, multinational corporation at the time, literally you could call the number on the website, use the dial by name directory, get to me. And my cell phone number was on the recording of my office phone line. So literally anyone in the world could have found my cell phone number in less than 5 minutes, starting from zero. And that was the case all the way back to the day I started the company. And same in politics, same in everything else. So, so I just try to be very open with all the stuff because I feel like it helps people. But anyway, I don't know a lot of other people that are doing that strategy. I know a ton of people that have bought huge amounts in retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, mostly with the Fidelity FBTC, Fidelity Bitcoin Exchange Traded Fund, FBTC. So most people I know a lot of people doing that. I know a lot of people buying a bunch of Bitcoin on Coinbase. I know a lot of people using BitKey for long-term storage. I know a lot less people that are using the Coinbase debit card, and most people it's a hassle they don't want to deal with. They've already got their sort of debit card or credit card or, 2% cash back credit card or whatever it is they use. And it's just easier for them to say, look, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. And then if I need to, I'll cash out of some Bitcoin and transfer it over to pay off a credit card bill or something like that. So obviously that's very easy to do, but you just don't get the real experience of, I'm using Bitcoin. Bitcoin works as money. One day it will be the only money. And when you use Bitcoin that way, it just becomes very clear that that's the future. And so I think it's very powerful because it really modifies how you think about Bitcoin when you're actually using the debit card. But I don't have a good sense of how many other people are out there. Obviously, Coinbase has more than 100 million customers. So even if a small percent of people are doing what I'm doing, that's still a whole lot of people from a debit card perspective. So anyway, those are the highlights. One bonus thing I'll put in there. Coinbase put out a notice recently that they are discontinuing the direct deposit on Coinbase from your paycheck straight to Bitcoin. That is actually temporary. They will relaunch direct deposit. They're in the process of rebuilding that whole thing in a more scalable way. So I did check with Coinbase, and they just to make sure that that was not a sort of a long-term end of life of the feature, and they said no, trust us, it'll be back. We just want to build it in a much more scalable and universally usable way for everyone, and that's just going to take some time. So, just FYI, direct deposit is temporarily on hold at Coinbase, but it is coming back. That doesn't impact your ability to use the debit card, other than it makes it a little bit more of a headache because you have to, instead of just setting up recurring buys, if you want to do it that way, you've got to sort of front load your purchases or make the purchases separately, or, set it up to automatically purchase every so often or something like that. But, that's not hard to do. But anyway, so hopefully this helps. As always, happy to answer any questions. Keep sending them my way. Nothing I like more than answering questions about Bitcoin. Thanks and have a great night, everyone. Bye.